When we speak of memory, we often imagine it as a simple recording of events, a mental archive of moments neatly filed and retrieved at will. Yet the truth of human remembrance is far more subtle, far more intimate, and far more revealing than any record could ever show. The mind does not simply remember because it happened. It remembers because the heart left something unfinished, because a piece of life's energy was unclaimed, unresolved, lingering in a space where understanding, acceptance, or completion never fully arrived. When a man cannot forget you, it is not merely because of the moments you shared together, but because those moments contained unresolved truths, threads of feeling, energy, and awareness that were never fully woven into his sense of being. This is the nature of the human heart. The heart experiences deeply, and it does not release easily. When a connection is meaningful, when a presence touches the inner self, there is a resonance that registers far beneath conscious thought. It is as though the heart leaves a mark on the mind, and an echo that cannot be silenced until the energy is acknowledged, examined, and integrated. You may have left a room, a conversation, or even a phase of life, but the heart lingers on the unfinished. It is not conscious. He may not know why he thinks of you at unexpected hours, why your image appears in the quiet corners of his mind, why a song or a scent or a gesture suddenly recalls you, and yet it does. It is the mind's way of seeking resolution, a gentle insistence from the unconscious to bring closure to what the heart could not complete. The unresolved does not always signify conflict. Sometimes it is simply a matter of recognition. When two energies meet, even briefly, they communicate in layers far beyond words. You may have been authentic, kind, and present, and yet he could not fully reconcile the impact of your presence. The mind remembers not because there was pain or drama, but because there was significance. The heart knew the depth of connection, and yet circumstances, timing, or personal limitations prevented it from settling into understanding or acceptance. The memory of that incomplete experience becomes a quiet companion, persistent and subtle, appearing unbidden to remind him that something essential was left unclaimed. Unresolved energy is like a note left suspended in the air. When a person experiences it, it creates a tension that the mind cannot ignore. He may attempt distraction, attempt to bury his thoughts, attempt to convince himself that it no longer matters. But the unresolved does not yield to suppression. It moves through the unconscious, a silent echo of what the heart could not digest, shaping moods, influencing perception, and quietly drawing attention back to the source. When you are remembered, it is not necessarily the events themselves that remain vivid, but the energy behind them, the subtle truths, the unspoken recognition, the emotional imprint that never received its rightful acknowledgement. Often this process of remembering is accompanied by confusion. The mind asks, why do I think of her now? Why does this memory rise? And yet the question misses the point. It is not the mind choosing to remember. It is the mind compelled by the heart's unfinished business. The unresolved is a force that gently insists on awareness. It asks him to sit with the emotions he avoided, to confront the longing he ignored, and to integrate the experience that he did not fully allow himself to feel. Memories appear not as punishment or longing alone, but as invitations to recognition, subtle reminders that something within him remained unsettled, unacknowledged, or incomplete. This is why absence has such a profound effect. In presence, energy is often distracted by engagement, by conversation, by the details of daily life. Yet when the physical proximity fades, the unresolved becomes more pronounced. The mind begins to replay interactions, gestures, and moments not in search of nostalgia, but in search of understanding. The mind attempts to make sense of what the heart could not resolve, moving through patterns of thought, dissecting actions, intentions, and feelings in the hope of reaching an equilibrium that was never fully achieved. And in this way, the memory persists, not as a burden, but as a teacher, as a mirror, reflecting the unresolved layers that were never given form, attention, or closure. He cannot forget you because the unresolved lingers in the spaces between thought and feeling. It is not about control or manipulation. It is about resonance and alignment. When a heart experiences truth that cannot yet be fully integrated, the mind becomes the custodian of that unprocessed energy. It records, replays, and recalls, seeking the resolution that the heart deferred. Every unspoken word, every subtle gesture, every depth of feeling that was not acknowledged in the moment becomes a thread in the tapestry of remembrance. The mind preserves these threads not as static memories, but as living, dynamic signals calling attention to the aspects of life, love, and presence that demand recognition. The mind remembers what the heart could not resolve because the heart's silence is never truly empty. It carries the weight of what was experienced, what was understood, and what remained incomplete. Every memory that returns, every thought that intrudes, every fleeting reflection that draws him back to you is the echo of unfinished energy seeking form, the mind attempting to reconcile with the heart, and the soul gently reminding him of the significance that once passed through his life. Silence is far more potent than most people realize. We are taught to believe that communication requires words, that meaning must be spoken, explained, or expressed. Yet the truth is that silence carries its own language, one that reaches deeper than the conscious mind, one that bypasses logic and reason, and one that touches the raw fabric of memory and emotion. When a man cannot forget you, it is often not because of the conversations you shared, nor the declarations you made, but because of the silences you held, the quiet spaces where presence was fully felt without the interference of speech. Words can describe, instruct, or persuade, but silence remembers. Silence imprints. Silence lingers. It becomes an emotional memory that echoes long after voices fade. When two people share a moment in quietude, the energy that flows between them is unfiltered, raw, and unmediated. Words are limited, they are structures imposed on feelings, often insufficient to capture the depth of what is truly present. Silence, however, does not explain. Silence does not limit. Silence simply allows presence to settle, to expand, to touch the spaces within a man that words cannot reach. In that silence, he experiences you not as a concept, not as a story, not as a memory attached to language, but as pure energy, pure awareness. Your presence becomes a sensation, a vibration, a memory encoded into the subconscious. The mind recalls it without needing a narrative. The heart remembers it without needing justification. The power of silence is in its stillness. It offers a space where reflection can arise naturally, where attention can turn inward, and where unresolved emotion finds a voice of its own. A fleeting glance, a pause in conversation, a moment of shared quiet, all of these can carry more weight than hours of spoken sentiment. When words are present, they often distract or dilute. They create expectation, interpretation, and sometimes even misunderstanding. Silence, however, removes the noise. It strips away pretense and performance. It allows the subtle truths of who you are, how you move, how you feel, and how you exist to be registered deeply. These truths are remembered with precision because they are not filtered through language, they are felt directly, and the heart cannot forget what it has felt. Emotional memory is particularly sensitive to silence because it thrives on presence rather than explanation. The mind can attempt to rationalize, to name, and to catalog spoken words, but silence communicates in ways the mind cannot fully grasp. It conveys intention without argument, depth without proof, and authenticity without performance. This is why he may recall a pause, a still glance, or the quiet way you entered a room more vividly than any conversation you ever had. The emotional imprint of silence is subtle yet persistent. It lingers like a soft echo, returning unexpectedly, stirring feelings that had no words attached to them, awakening recognition and longing that cannot be easily dismissed. There is also a paradox within silence. It invites projection. In the absence of words, the mind begins to fill the space, to imagine possibilities, to replay memories, and to weave interpretations. This is not illusion. It is the mind attempting to reconcile the emotional truth it cannot articulate. The quieter the moment, the more room the unconscious has to work, to imprint, and to anchor. He may not consciously recognize the power of these silences, yet they remain vivid in his emotional memory, persistent in ways words could never achieve. The pause between sentences, the gentle space before leaving, the unspoken presence beside him, all of these become encoded as something significant, something unforgettable. Furthermore, silence holds a kind of authority that words rarely achieve. Words can argue, persuade, or insist, but silence simply exists. It requires attention. It calls for awareness. It allows the observer to feel what is present without intrusion. When a woman can hold her energy in quiet confidence, when she allows the space to be filled by her presence rather than her explanation, she creates a memory that resonates far beyond her immediate expression. He remembers not the words she said, but the energy she radiated in silence, the stillness that contained depth, the quiet that allowed him to perceive parts of himself he could not articulate. Silence also cultivates reflection. In quiet, the mind turns inward, revisiting moments, sensations, and interactions that were meaningful yet incomplete. Emotional memory is strengthened when reflection is involved, and reflection often arises most powerfully in silence. Words often provide closure, but closure prevents deeper encoding. Unfinished emotional threads, experienced in the quiet presence of another, create a subtle tension that the mind continues to process long after the encounter has ended. He may find himself thinking of you not because he consciously wants to, but because his emotional memory is actively seeking to resolve, integrate, and understand the energy that silence revealed. Finally, silence has a timeless quality. Words fade. Conversations end. Opinions are forgotten. But the imprint of silence is permanent. It resides in the unconscious, in the memory of sensation, in the awareness of energy, and in the subtle recognition of presence. He cannot forget you because the moments you shared without words reached into layers of his mind and heart that language could never reach. Those moments became encoded as emotional memory, persistent, vivid, and inescapable. Silence activates emotional memory more than words ever could because it bypasses the limitations of the logical mind, touches the core of feeling, and leaves traces of presence that linger, stirring, awakening, and calling long after the moment has passed. Our presence is not measured by how much one speaks, moves, or performs. It is measured by the energy one carries, the depth of awareness that exists in each moment, and the subtle influence that touches those around without effort or intention. True presence is quiet yet undeniable. It does not demand recognition, but its absence cannot be ignored. It is a force that embeds itself into memory and consciousness, often unnoticed while it is felt, only becoming fully understood when it is no longer there. When a man cannot forget you, it is not solely because of what you did, but because your presence left an imprint so profound that only your absence could illuminate it. Presence is not the same as attention. Many people are attentive, yet their energy leaves little mark. Presence is alignment, coherence, and authenticity embodied. It is the state of being fully here, fully aware, fully alive within oneself. When a woman carries such presence, it is felt by those around her as a subtle but undeniable pull. He may not be able to name it in the moment. He may be distracted by circumstance or his own mental noise. Yet subconsciously, the energy you carry is registered, stored, and remembered. It touches layers of perception that do not rely on logic or words. It touches him where his mind, busy with thought, cannot reach. Absence, however, is the mirror that reveals the depth of this imprint. When you leave, the mind begins to notice what it overlooked during your presence. There is a stillness, a gap, a subtle void that invites reflection. In that absence, he begins to recognize the nuances that presence alone cannot convey. The quiet way you breathe life into the room. The steady rhythm of your energy that grounded moments that could have otherwise been chaotic. The authenticity that made pretense feel unnecessary. These qualities, invisible amid the fullness of presence, suddenly become undeniable when contrasted with your absence. The heart perceives the space left behind, and the mind attempts to reconcile the loss, realizing the depth of what it encountered but did not fully register while you were near. This phenomenon is not limited to romantic relationships. It applies to any interaction where energy touches consciousness. Yet in intimacy, absence reveals its power most clearly. When he notices that the world feels subtly different without you, when the colors, sounds, and textures of ordinary life seem less vivid, he begins to understand that your presence had shaped his experience in ways that words cannot capture. Presence leaves a mark not through dramatic action or constant attention, but through subtle, consistent alignment of energy that resonates in the observer. Absence simply illuminates what was already there, allowing him to perceive the depth of your influence without needing explanation. The imprint of presence exists on multiple layers simultaneously in memory, in emotion, in subtle physiological patterns. He remembers the way your energy made him feel alive, seen, and recognized, even if he cannot consciously articulate it. He recalls the ease with which time passed in your company, the fluidity with which you moved through life, and the quiet confidence that never demanded acknowledgement. Yet these layers of presence often go unnoticed until they are contrasted with absence. It is the lack of your energy that forces recognition, highlighting the ways in which you shaped his perception, stirred his emotions, and challenged him to awaken to a fuller version of himself. Absence is not simply the physical departure. It is the moment when the mind is free to reflect, unencumbered by the distraction of presence. In that reflection, he begins to notice what he had taken for granted. The way your laughter left a space in the air that others could not fill. The way your gaze drew attention inward, making him see himself more clearly. The way your calm energy brought a sense of order to chaos. Presence imprints subtly, almost invisibly, but absence reveals the patterns it left behind. Memory and consciousness collaborate to illuminate the contours of energy that were previously hidden within ordinary awareness. Moreover, absence has a way of magnifying the qualities of presence. When you are there, energy blends. When you are gone, energy stands out. The subtle harmonics of your essence, unnoticed amid constant proximity, are suddenly amplified in your absence. He may experience longing, nostalgia, or a quiet recognition that something essential is missing. It is not merely your physical presence he recalls, but the emotional, psychological, and energetic influence that shaped his inner landscape. In this way, absence becomes a teacher, revealing the true measure of the imprint you left behind. Presence leaves a subtle, lasting mark precisely because it does not demand attention or recognition. Its value is revealed only when it is no longer accessible. He cannot forget you because the energy you carried altered the way he experiences moments, people, and even himself. Absence is the lens that allows him to see the depth of that transformation, to feel the spaces you once filled, and to realize the uniqueness of what you contributed to his life. He begins to sense that your presence was more than companionship. It was a mirror, a guide, and a subtle shaping force. And only through absence does he fully perceive the significance of the impression you left. Life is composed of energy, movement, and flow. Every interaction, every encounter, every connection leaves behind a trace of energy. When these experiences are left unresolved, they do not simply vanish, they linger, vibrating quietly in the spaces we carry within ourselves. Unfinished energies, like gentle ripples across still water, continue their motion long after the surface appears calm. They seek resolution, integration, and closure, not necessarily from the other person, but within the consciousness that experienced them. When a man cannot forget you, it is often because the energies between you were never fully completed, never fully reconciled, and therefore continue their subtle search for completion, guiding his mind and heart back to you repeatedly. Unfinished energies arise whenever the heart is engaged more deeply than the mind is willing or able to process. Perhaps a conversation was left incomplete, a question unanswered, or a feeling unspoken. Perhaps the timing of life did not allow for clarity, or circumstances prevented understanding. Yet the energy remains persistent and alive. It does not obey reason or logic, exists beyond conscious choice. The mind may try to distract, rationalize, or suppress it, but energy does not disappear under force. Instead, it seeks fulfillment, nudging awareness toward the unresolved, nudging the heart toward what remains unacknowledged. This is why thoughts of someone can return unexpectedly, why their memory resurfaces without warning, why longing or reflection arises in moments of quiet. These are the manifestations of unfinished energy in search of completion. Completion is not always tangible. It is not always about reconciliation, closure, or reunion. Completion is an internal process, a subtle alignment of perception, emotion, and awareness that allows energy to move freely once more. When energy remains unfinished, it creates tension, a quiet insistence within the psyche that something essential has not yet been honored. The mind registers the presence of absence, the subconscious notes the gaps in understanding or expression, and the heart remembers the feeling of incompletion. In relationships, especially those charged with emotional depth, unfinished energies linger longest. They form invisible cords that connect experiences across time and space, pulling awareness back to the source even when it is not consciously sought. The psychology behind this is rooted in the human desire for coherence and integration. The psyche is designed to seek harmony between experience, emotion, and perception. When an experience is left incomplete, when words, gestures, or understanding are withheld and imbalance remains, this imbalance is experienced as subtle unrest, repeated reflection, or persistent memory. The mind may replay moments repeatedly, analyzing them from different angles, searching for insight, meaning, or understanding. The heart continues to feel long after the initial emotional surge has passed, because it senses that the energy it received has not yet returned to equilibrium. Completion, therefore, is not an external event. It is an internal alignment, a settling of energy that resolves tension and restores flow. When a man cannot forget you, it is often because the energies between you were significant and left unresolved. He may try to rationalize your absence, convince himself that the connection no longer matters, or distract himself with the ordinary patterns of life, yet the unfinished energy remains active. It operates below conscious thought, guiding attention back to moments, gestures, or feelings that were never fully processed. It is not manipulation, nor is it deliberate longing. It is the natural movement of energy seeking to complete its course. The more meaningful the interaction, the stronger the imprint, and the more persistent the unresolved energy. Unfinished energies are like threads dangling in the fabric of life. Each thread contains potential, the potential for understanding, recognition, or transformation. When left loose, these threads pull subtly at consciousness, creating a sense of incompleteness that cannot be ignored. He may feel it as nostalgia, curiosity, or emotional resonance that defies explanation. These threads compel attention because energy in motion does not rest, it seeks integration. The unresolved space between you and him becomes a site where reflection, awareness, and subtle longing converge, reminding him that something essential remains unfinished and must be acknowledged, even if only internally. This dynamic also explains the power of subtle presence. Completion is not always found in dramatic gestures or intense declarations. Sometimes the energy that remains unfinished is encoded in quiet moments, a glance, a smile, a shared silence, or the resonance of alignment without words. When these moments are left without resolution, when acknowledgement or understanding is deferred, they become active points within the psyche, quietly demanding attention and reflection. Energy that is unfinished seeks the wholeness it has not yet achieved, returning repeatedly in memory and feeling until integration occurs. The intensity of unfinished energies is often amplified by absence. When the physical or emotional presence of a person is no longer accessible, the mind and heart are left to process what remains incomplete. Reflection deepens, emotional memory strengthens, and the desire for understanding or resolution becomes more pronounced. Energy that was subtle in the moment of presence becomes magnified in absence, revealing the depth of impact and the potency of what was left unfinished. He cannot forget you because the energy between you continues to move, seeking the completion that was deferred, pressing quietly yet persistently on awareness, emotion, and memory. In a world where ordinary is abundant and repetition is constant, rarity becomes a force that resonates far beyond simple recognition. What is rare is not measured by its appearance, its possessions, or even its outward achievements. Rarity is measured by depth, authenticity, alignment, and resonance, qualities that the human heart instinctively notices but cannot always define. When a man cannot forget you, it is often because you are rare in ways that cannot be substituted, replicated, or replaced. Rarity leaves an imprint precisely because it transcends familiarity, expectation, and the ordinary rhythms of life, creating a space in consciousness that cannot be filled by anything or anyone else. Rarity is not about being unusual for attention or standing out for performance. It is about being wholly aligned with oneself. A rare person carries energy that is coherent, calm, and consistent. Their presence communicates truth without argument, depth without explanation, and power without aggression. These qualities are difficult to mimic because they emerge from inner integration rather than external imitation. The mind senses this alignment instinctively. When someone encounters such rarity, it registers not just in thought but in sensation, memory, and subtle emotional resonance. It is a recognition that something essential has entered the field of perception, something that ordinary interactions or encounters cannot replicate. The mind and heart are drawn to rarity because they respond to what is genuinely impactful. When experiences are ordinary, they blend into the background of life and are easily replaced by new stimuli. Yet rare experiences, rare presences, and rare connections leave traces that persist. The energy that is authentic, complete, and aligned interacts with human consciousness at a level deeper than memory alone. It resonates in ways that continue to influence thoughts, feelings, and perceptions long after the initial encounter. He cannot forget you because your rarity created a benchmark in his inner landscape. A subtle, unshakable standard of presence, depth, and truth. Rarity is revealed not only in grand gestures or dramatic moments, but in the subtleties of character, energy, and consistency. the way you hold yourself, the way your gaze meets his, the patience and calm that emanates from your energy, all of these qualities contribute to the sense that you are irreplaceable. It is not that he cannot find another person to occupy space beside him, but that no one else can occupy the same space within his awareness and consciousness. The subtleties of your alignment, the energy you carry, and the way it interacts with his own consciousness create a resonance that is singular. Nothing that is common or performative can replicate it. What is rare also becomes impossible to replace because it interrupts the ordinary patterns of perception and expectation. When someone encounters authenticity, alignment, and depth, it challenges them to expand their own awareness. He becomes aware of dimensions within himself that are stirred, awakened, or mirrored by your presence. Ordinary interactions rarely leave this effect. Rarity, however, functions as a mirror for growth, reflection, and awakening. Once he has experienced it, ordinary experiences feel incomplete or insufficient. The comparison is subtle, often unconscious, but it is felt deeply. The ordinary cannot replace the rare because it cannot provide the same reflection, the same resonance, or the same depth. Memory and emotional imprint are closely tied to what is rare. The mind holds on to what is unique because it is meaningful. It continues to return to it because it cannot be integrated into ordinary patterns. He may try to distract himself, convince himself of indifference, or seek substitutes, but the rarity of your presence acts as a gravitational force that draws attention back to you repeatedly. It is not about conscious effort, it is about recognition at the level of energy, alignment, and impact. What is rare leaves a space in consciousness that cannot be filled because that space was carved by qualities that are singular, specific, and irreproducible. Rarity is also timeless in its effect. While ordinary qualities may fade in memory or lose significance with repetition, rare qualities continue to resonate. Even after absence, even after time has passed, the impact of rare energy persists. The mind recalls it vividly, the heart feels it subtly, and the soul recognizes it intuitively. He cannot forget you because your rarity has created an enduring standard, a subtle metric by which all subsequent experiences are unconsciously measured. Others may come close, may replicate certain actions or expressions, but they cannot replicate the energy, alignment, and authenticity that made you rare. Ultimately, rarity is inseparable from inner integrity and authenticity. It is not cultivated for the purpose of recognition or influence. It arises naturally when a person is fully aligned with themselves. When a man encounters this, he recognizes it instinctively. The mind notices it, the heart feels it, and the energy leaves an indelible mark that is impossible to replace. It is remembered not merely for what was done or said, but for the coherence, depth, and resonance that cannot be duplicated, replicated, or substituted by anything ordinary. In a world full of the replaceable, what is rare remains unforgettable. Alignment is a state of being where energy, intention, and presence converge into coherence. It is not the result of performance, nor is it cultivated for external validation. A woman in alignment is fully grounded in herself, aware of her inner rhythm, and present with the flow of life without resistance or attachment. Her energy is steady, authentic, and complete. When such a woman interacts with a man, her presence has the power to function as a mirror, reflecting aspects of his inner world that he may have avoided, ignored, or never fully acknowledged. This mirror does not manipulate or instruct, it simply reflects with clarity and subtlety, allowing him to confront, reset, and recalibrate his own energy and awareness. A man's inner world is often fragmented. It is composed of unresolved experiences, unexpressed emotions, unacknowledged desires, and unconscious patterns. Most interactions in life engage only the surface level. Words are exchanged, tasks are accomplished, routines are followed. Rarely does someone encounter another who exists from the depth of their own alignment. When a woman embodies alignment, her energy interacts with his unconscious in ways that reveal what has been hidden or suppressed. Her presence exposes inconsistencies, softens rigidity, and gently challenges habitual patterns. In essence, she becomes a mirror not by telling, instructing, or correcting, but by radiating coherence and authenticity that cannot be ignored. The power of this mirror effect lies in subtlety. It does not rely on confrontation or criticism. It does not need argument or persuasion. Instead, her alignment creates a field of awareness in which he naturally encounters himself. In her presence, his habitual defenses, reactive tendencies, and unintegrated emotions become apparent. not because she points them out, but because her energy illuminates the contrast. He may notice patience where he is restless, calm where he is agitated, clarity where he is confused. This reflection is precise and unavoidable because it is grounded in truth and authenticity. A woman in alignment does not distort. She reflects the true state of what exists within him, revealing the hidden aspects that require recognition and recalibration. This mirror has the power to reset a man's inner world. When energy meets energy, the mind and heart respond. Patterns that once seemed fixed can shift in response to the coherence she radiates. Old fears, habitual reactions, and unresolved tensions are brought into awareness, not through argument but through resonance. He begins to perceive himself differently, to recognize the parts of himself that have been dormant, and to integrate perspectives he previously avoided. Alignment creates clarity, and clarity fosters transformation. In her presence, he has the opportunity to reset his internal dynamics, harmonize fragmented energies, and recalibrate his approach to life, relationships, and self-perception. The effect of alignment is amplified by consistency. It is not the rare performance or occasional display that influences deeply. It is the steady, unwavering presence of a woman who is attuned to herself in every moment. This constancy provides a stable reference point for him. In the chaotic fluctuations of thought, emotion, and life experience, her aligned energy acts as an anchor. It allows him to measure, reflect, and adjust his own inner state without pressure, judgment, or demand. In other words, her alignment creates a safe space for his unconscious and conscious selves to synchronize, encouraging growth, reflection, and self-realization. Furthermore, a woman in alignment activates aspects of a man that are often dormant. Her energy calls forth awareness, courage, emotional depth, and authenticity. He may experience a heightened sense of presence, a renewed clarity of thought, or a deep emotional resonance that he cannot explain, yet feels compelled to honor. This is because alignment functions as a natural magnet for authenticity. When one person embodies coherence, it does not merely affect their own state, it subtly influences the energy around them. The mirror she holds reflects his potential, his capacity for growth, and his latent strengths. He begins to recognize that the way he experiences the world, responds to challenges, and engages with relationships can be different, fuller, and more conscious. The impact of this mirror is also cumulative. It is not restricted to moments of interaction. Its effect reverberates long after she is absent. The impressions of her alignment remain within him, subtly reshaping perception, response, and energy patterns. Even in her absence, he may notice shifts in thought, feeling, or behavior that are traceable to the clarity, stability, and authenticity she modeled. This is why a man cannot easily forget a woman in alignment. She has not only occupied space externally, she has entered his inner world, held up a mirror to it, and facilitated recalibration at levels that are often unconscious and enduring. Ultimately, alignment is magnetic because it is real. It does not demand attention, nor does it seek approval. Its influence arises from coherence, consistency, and authenticity, creating a reflection that cannot be ignored. A woman in alignment does not merely interact with a man, she affects him at a structural level, reorganizing patterns of thought, emotion, and energy in ways that lead to profound inner recalibration. Through her presence, he gains the opportunity to see himself, understand himself, and reset his inner world, not by force, persuasion, or instruction, but through resonance, reflection, and the quiet power of coherence